Hello, Mom and Dad Meet World. So I wanted to talk to you guys more about the transition over from the MacBook Pro 16 to the MacBook Pro 14. I've got it right here. I've already got another cover on here. I've got just a plain black cover on here as opposed to the flowery one. So I did not mind the flowery one at all. The only thing I liked about this one is that this one actually covered up the corners right here. And covering up the corners was actually really nice because sometimes I do bump it on the corner, and the other one did not have that corner cover, where this one here does have that corner cover. And I've added the Velcro on top, as I do attach like external SSDs. I do like to just stick them to the top of the case here to help with just the placement. So but I want to talk about a little bit more about the actual physical differences transitioning from the 16 to the 14. So obviously the screen size is smaller to go from the 16 to the 14. Yes, right here, especially when you have like two Word documents up, or if you've got a document and a spreadsheet up, or if you've got an email and let's say a Safari tab open, or 3 or 4, it does get a little bit more cramped. And for productivity wise, for work wise, I have noticed that yeah, you're having to kind of shrink those windows down a little bit to accommodate them to fit on the smaller screen. But as far as like using Final Cut Pro, I actually do not find a big difference transitioning from the 14 to, or from the 16 to the 14, because if I want that more view on there, I'll just put it in full screen and I will actually get the full view. So I haven't found that to be a challenge. But as far as like physical wise, so if you take a peek at the trackpad right here too, the trackpad is a bit smaller. Smaller in a way because I do find myself hitting the edges of the trackpad just a little bit more, and then when you do grab the edges of the trackpad, it reminds you that yes, it is a smaller trackpad. On the 16 I've never had that problem, so what I did is I just went to my settings and I just made the sensitivity just a little bit more to where I wasn't grabbing the trackpad to where the cursor could go all over the screen without going to the edges of the trackpad. So that's just a little bit of a setting. Also the same setting I have on my wife's 13-inch MacBook Pro. So I've done that on there to kind of help mitigate that issue. The other thing is, physically wise, smaller speakers. So it does have smaller speakers, so just a little bit less bass, but it still sounds full, still sounds very clear. But if you've got plug-in headphones or AirPods, doing that mitigates that issue. So, and then especially if you're editing any videos, you'll definitely want to put on headphones to make sure that your background music isn't too loud, which is a mistake that I've made when I was first editing these videos. I was just using the speakers on the actual computer and I thought it was loud, or my voice was loud enough and the music was quiet enough. No. And I can't remake some of those videos that I've already put out there because I've had the music just too loud, and after putting in the headphones I was like, yeah, that is way too loud. So definitely use the headphones, especially when editing your videos. But as far as smaller speakers go, not really a big deal. And then with this too, having the smaller footprint of this just being a smaller computer, I take it with me just a little bit more, and it's been totally fine. Take it with me to coffee shops, to cafes, and I do notice that it brings a lot less attention because it is a smaller computer, more of that 13 to 14 inch form factor versus that 16. I have walked into cafes where I have seen people watching content editing on a 16-inch MacBook Pro, and it does look very good and it looks amazing on there because it is that bigger, more vast screen. But as far as having a little bit more discretion and it being more discreet, this right here definitely does just that, having just that smaller form factor. And I do love still having the the SD card reader, because the 13-inch does not have that SD card reader, but having that SD card reader and the MagSafe is just totally awesome. But again, the 16 has all that as standard also. Then one more thing, so as far as like looking at these computers, they do look the same, but I do want to reference the $2,400 model, which is the M3 Pro 14-inch. You can also get in space black, and this $3,200 model right here, which is the M3 Max, which is the bin model. So physically they look about the same. So for that $800 difference on the M3 Pro, you get the unbinned CPU GPU, which is the 12-core CPU, 18-core GPU, and then you also get that 1 terabyte drive, and then 18 gigs of memory compared to 36 gigs of memory. And the biggest difference again is going to be that M3 Pro versus the M3 Max. So you have a little bit less bandwidth, 150 gigabits per second memory bandwidth versus 300, and then less GPU cores, 12 compared to 14, and then 18 compared to 30 GPU cores. But again, the big question I have, which I've also asked myself, is will you ever really utilize those extra cores? Will you even notice having the less cores and the less memory bandwidth? Because identically they look the same, and then having that 1 terabyte of SSD storage, I think, is probably the biggest difference between actually it's not a difference, but it's something in reality, real world use, that you want at least that 1 terabyte of storage. Because when I do a lot of editing, even work stuff, I will offload those onto different drives. And even editing, I don't like to actually edit right off of the main drive, because I will just eat up that space on the computer itself, and I want to just keep that free and keep that on the external drive. So it's just something I ask myself, and I ask you out there, do you really need that extra headroom for that M3 Max when that M3 Pro, I believe, will do just fine? And even 18 gigs of memory is still quite a bit of memory. And again, that important 1 terabyte is what they both have. And then you gotta ask yourself, are you really utilizing that extra power for the M3 Max and having that extra CPU and GPU power? Or are you better off just saving that $800 and just getting the M3 Pro unbinned? But I also did forget, to all the video editors out there, or to people who will use that extra GPU horsepower, you do get those extra encode and decode engines, double, that you don't get on the M3 Pro. But again, if you are not doing that type of work for a living or not getting paid for it, like I am, is it really worth that $800? So to me, coming from the 16-inch M1 Max and then having the 16-inch M3 Max, having that export time just be very, very quick, I'm just very used to that. And I guess for that extra $800, to me, I think is worth it. But then in reality, would I rather have that extra terabyte of storage to go up to maybe 2 terabytes of storage, which if you do go up to 2 terabytes of storage, it's actually still less money than it would be for the 14-inch with the M3 Max version. Again, the factory configuration. So maybe that's something else to kind of consider. So again, those are just my thoughts, having used this computer for just a little bit more and a little bit longer, just to put out there the physical differences I've noticed, and then just the other differences in terms of visual differences, but yet the internal differences as to whether or not you will actually benefit from them to go up in price. So if you found this video helpful, if you liked it, found it somewhat entertaining, please hit the like and subscribe button. It really helps out our channel. And thank you for watching. Until next time, Bye for now.